Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about generative AI and data management. If a business hopes to fully tap the enormous power of generative AI, they need a data stream that's up to the task. To discuss that, I'm joined by Rex Ahlstrom, CTO of Syniti. Rex, very good to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, James. Great to be here.
So I think it's pretty amazing. Artificial intelligence is getting so much buzz these days. Certainly, generative AI is getting a lot of headlines. I think that the one thing that doesn't get as much attention is that artificial intelligence and generative AI devour data. They go nowhere without data. So it's like we don't hear a lot about data repositories and data analytics, but it is really the foundation of artificial intelligence. Clarify for us, if you would, what's the relationship between quality data and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, data quality often thought of as some type of back office IT function, right? We need to improve our data quality. But
Mhm.
when you start bringing in things like generative AI that really has the power to disrupt markets and business processes and create competitive advantage or disadvantage, data plays a much more significant role. And oftentimes, when we say data quality, people think about technical data quality. But what we're really talking about with data quality is, do I have the right data to be able to train generative AI models? Am I doing the analysis on data that is relevant to the business? And oftentimes that's distributed, right? It's in multiple applications,
Right.
maybe stored in different formats and everything else. So yeah, it's a big problem, and there's some real measurements out there in the marketplace. It's estimated that businesses are losing somewhere around 13 million a year because
Mm-hmm.
of the bad data.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we did a HFS research study recently that where we polled executives, and they said that 60% or less of their organization's data is useful.
Mm.
Despite the fact that 80% of them claim they trusted their data, right? So there's obviously a gap between a company's understanding of what true data quality means and how that data could adversely impact them in adoption of things like generative AI.
There's something you said that I think is really a point worth looking at. You mentioned the fact that the data can be distributed. It could be in various different silos, perhaps. So I guess I hear different things about that. It could be a positive or a negative in that a lot of companies want to distribute their data. They want to distribute access to the data, and they might have offices around the country, around the world, and so they want that distributed data framework. So is it companies aren't necessarily wanting their data all in one place, are they?
No, no, and actually the trend is more to a distributed hybrid model, right?
Right.
The adoption of hybrid ERP approaches where
Yep.
companies are able to pick best of breed applications, assemble those to deliver an effective business process means that the go forward position is that it will be distributed. And especially within large enterprises, that's the
Mhm.
only reasonable way for them to be able to operate at a global level.
Right. Well, I think the big question, I think the companies are struggling with this is how can companies ensure that their data quality is up to the level required by AI? Is it about prep? Is it about governance, compliance? What is really the issue there?
Yeah, probably all of the above. But where I would start is in two vectors. One is to say, when we say data quality, go one step beyond that and say, what is the data that I care about as a business? What is it that represents, for example, the products I manufacture or the customers that I serve? What is it within my organization that is probably already driving their current reporting level?
Mhm.
Below that is the data that supports those models, and then data quality comes into play, right? So there's really two phases. One is to look at what is my overall view of the objects that I care about. How is that impacting business process if data quality is bad? And then if I need to fix it, where does it reside? What are the requirements? And how
Mhm.
do I govern it long term? From an AI perspective, the other thing is that it's not just the data quality vector, it's what I mentioned earlier. If you're going to use generative AI, you want to make decisions based on the data that matters. And you
Mhm.
could have the cleanest data in the world, but if it's not the data model that you're trying to make a decision on, then you're going to get a bad result, whether the quality is good or bad. And of course, it goes without saying, it's the old garbage in, garbage out statement that if it's bad data quality to begin with, then all bets are off.
It seems like one of the challenges for companies is finding out who performs those tasks. They're checking on quality. They're finding out. It's almost like they need to take an entire inventory of where their data is located. What are the job titles, or who does the company look to be doing those pretty complicated tasks?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and too often it gets thrown over the fence to IT to say, hey, data quality is a technical topic, and IT, you need to make sure data quality is good. But IT doesn't always have the ownership, full ownership of the maybe master data objects or other items, right? That's more owned at the business level, because more often than not, those objects are very critical to critical business processes like order to cash and procure to pay, and pick, pack, ship processes in manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of roles where you have to have ownership and accountability that bridge that divide between IT and business. And there has to be a shared usage model where everybody knows, like, a technical impact to data quality, how that will impact overall business process. And if changes are they needed at the business process level, or are they needed at the data management level?
Mm-hmm.
So business and IT have equal, two sides of the coin, ownership of making sure that what they use and what they report on is really what matters to the business, and that it's of highest quality possible.
Yep, makes sense. All right, let's drill down into Syniti. I mean, how is Syniti addressing the data management needs of its clients? What's the Syniti advantage?
The big advantage that we bring is that we look at data management like a company would look at a business process. We're not just throwing technical tools to solve a technical problem. We're looking at how we deliver that bridge between business and IT. So we tend to focus our software development on things that are approachable by business users, so they can be a collaborator in the process that the company is going through as it relates to data. The other is that we try not to look at things as just a project, right? Hey, we're going to implement a program to go and improve our data quality, or we're going to implement a program to go and do a data migration to a new ERP or cloud system. But it's really about getting the data clean when we get there, when we get through the project. But then it's also about staying clean, because if you're putting in all the effort to understand your rules, understand your policies, understand your data sets and systems and all of the technical foundations, right, where the data comes from, then you've collected a lot of intellectual property that you can move forward to keep clean, to keep your corporate focus on how to improve and drive data excellence.
Yeah, I think it's an important point. You're talking about making it's a process. It's not a project. It's going to be an ongoing process that will really never end as long as you're trying to manage data.
Yeah, exactly. And even the term data migration, it's such an overloaded term. And a lot of times when we engage with customers, they'll say, well, my data migration is 18 months or whatever the span is, and they think it's done at the end. We've been at one global, top 5 pharmaceutical company for the last 20 years doing data migration, right? Because they're constantly acquiring, or they're divesting, or they're driving a new business process that requires data transformation. So it is a lifelong journey. And again, one of the things that we find unique in our tool is that there's a lot of intellectual property, again, knowledge about data that's derived from each of these phases of a project. Why not capture that and make it reusable so that your next step in your data journey is easier and faster and can leverage everything you've learned in your prior efforts?
Okay, well, let's look at the question that I think it's the biggest question the companies are looking at is the future, because they want to know how to prepare now. So what do you think in terms of the future of data management and artificial intelligence? What do you forecast in the years ahead, maybe 2 to 4 years out or so?
Well, one major thing is that, look, the advantage of something like generative AI and these technologies is that we can take more of the rote work that would take a lot of labor or very specialized expertise, and we can automate some of those tasks, right? The ultimate decision making, how to leverage AI, what to automate, and what to bring to the knowledge workers within the firm can be highly variable. And I think we're going to see more and more compliance regulations, right? We saw the early news of large companies where employees were pushing out proprietary information into like ChatGPT, and
Right.
it poses a lot of significant problems from an exposure and risk perspective. Governments around the globe are trying to address what type of regulations do we need relative to AI and generative AI specifically. So those will drive behaviors in companies and how they look at the requirements for the software they acquire. But for software vendors like Syniti and others, it's going to be important to show how we make that simpler, right? How can we use, for example, not open generative AI models, but is there a way to firewall the key information that we may want to use to train a generative AI model, right? How do we put in the security and governance controls in place? And I think another big driver from a software perspective is we can't just think of the technical user. If we're not delivering software that makes this approachable and manageable by business analysts and data scientists and others, then we're going to have a huge gap, because we'll find a massive backlog, right, in our IT departments trying to keep up with the demands of the business.
I think that last point is a particularly important one that I'm not sure businesses always fully understand, and that there's something I think of it as the democratization of IT, and that it can't be just the really advanced data scientist. It needs to be the middle manager. It needs to be access, and work needs to be done by people at all different levels.
Yeah, exactly. And look, this is where AI is very powerful, but you need that expert, that business expert, to interpret results and to understand what potentially do I need to put forward in a training model or something else to get a better result. And when it's tuned, then it can be generally consumed and relied upon. But yeah, to the point earlier, the foundations of where am I getting my data from? Do I understand all of those sources? Do I understand the quality of the information? Have I thought through what that means at a holistic level for the data sets that I want to analyze? And if I haven't done that, you're going to get bad results from your generative AI. We had an example where we used, for example, some knowledge graph assets that we maintain in our platform for terms and policies and rules, data quality rules, regulations. And we wanted to try to generate automated SQL for data quality reports. And we used OpenAI in this case, but we used the API integration. We asked it to generate the top 10 rules for a particular case, maybe improving cash flow. And then we saw what came out of the model. And it was hit or miss, I would say. But once we were able to train it with the actual policies, some of the known rules, as well as known systems and data sets that the company was actually leveraging, the accuracy went up by an order of magnitude. It was significantly better. So again, the foundations allow you to get a better result. And the result is really why you're engaging in the whole conversation of generative AI to begin with.
Right, right. Rex, I think you said it. It's a lot of good stuff. It is going to be a fascinating sector to follow in the years ahead. Thank you so much for sharing your insight today. And please come back and talk with us again sometime.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, James.